Welcome to TAOTalks. This is season 2, episode 5. I think you're going to really enjoy this episode because in this episode, I shared about this surprising event that occurred in my life when I visited Austin for the first time after having moved to New York, and the aftermath or the avalanche of feelings that I experienced when I came back to New York after my trip from Austin. And so that was something that Jesse and I broke it down here, and there's a lot of fruitful gems in this one.
Good one. I think we went a little bit deeper into the emotional stuff, so I think it's very fruitful. I hope you enjoy it.
Enjoy it. If you enjoy it, leave a comment and subscribe to our channel. Thanks. Bye.
This is TAOTalks. T-A-O, the art of Tao. TAOTalks, the art of exploring life. TAOTalks, the art of being. TAOTalks, philosophical musing. TAOTalks, ancient wisdom for modern beings. TAOTalks, the art of understanding. TAOTalks, universal laws. TAOTalks, timeless insights. Welcome to TAOTalks. T-A-O, the art of.
How you doing, Jesse?
I'm excellent. It's good Saturday spring morning here in Texas. How about you?
It's good. The stuff is fluctuating right now. So we have like warmer days and then we have colder days all within one week. And so it's good. It's beautiful out here. The trees are blooming for sure. They're like whole trees that flower. I've never seen that before. Like just
Awesome.
full of flower, the full-on tree.
You're in the part of the country where both spring and fall are going to be absolutely spectacular.
Yeah. I want to kind of start off this episode by talking about something that we talked about in the last episode, which was the notion of missing something or someone. Mm-hmm. So it's been 3 weeks, but this emotion the conglomerate of emotions that I felt were so extreme that I like took a note that I was like, this is something I'd love to get into. So 3 weeks ago, I came to Austin. That was my first time kind of coming back to Austin after I moved here. Just there for a weekend. Flew in like late Friday night and then flew out Monday morning. And it was great. Like we were supposed to like hang out with friends and go on like a local camping trip down in Austin, but it was going to rain. So we had to cancel it. But nonetheless, we like still met up at a restaurant and just hung out. Got to hang out with my wife. Got to hang out with my wife's brothers in town as well. So we like played board games. Just lots of love and lots of energy and lots of, like communalness compared to my isolated lifestyle that I have here, even though I go into work in person. Did that and then came back Monday morning. So I had a very early flight, I had to leave at 3:00, whatever. So a little sleep deprived, to say the least. And I flew in. I'm in this space and it just hits me. Like something that my wife had actually asked me about the first time I moved here, where she alluded to this question of, hey, how did you do it? Like, because when she visited, she had that moment on the first evening as well. It's just this feeling of anxiety and like uncertainty and I guess a little bit of grief or sadness too. And she was asking me at that time, it's like, yeah, how did you do it? I'm like, I didn't experience it. Like, it was fine. And really, when I dug into it, and at that time, I was just excited to be in this space. And I got into doing the work of making this space mine. So I didn't have the chance to feel all that stuff at that moment. There was an excitement of starting a new job. So there was that. There was all of these things happening. But then after my trip back from Austin, like all those masks were kind of quote unquote gone. And I had just been fed with this love and energy. And I remember even leaving my apartment in Austin at 3 a.m. and just tearing up because I have to leave. Like I was sitting with my dog and my wife was there. And it was such an interesting feeling because I felt so much love. And at the same time, I was kind of fueled with rage that I have to do this. Why do I got to do this? I don't want to do this. And it only accentuated more when I was in this space. Like when I left the apartment, I could not look back because I was like, man, like I have to do this tough thing. And if I look back, I'm afraid that I won't actually be able to actually go. And then I came here and I just cried like out loud. I was screaming and just feeling so alone and confused and sad and angry that I have to do this as part of my chapter of this life. And it was very interesting. I know I'm kind of going on and I'm not giving you an opportunity to like have more space, but I want to just put out all the context is that the feelings that I felt on that morning when I was back here in New York, I had actually felt that before. Like it was a couple of years ago. I wanted to do this 30-day road trip in my car alone. I had just graduated from my my graduate program, and I was like, this is something I had like planned and looked forward to so much. So from Florida, I was gonna make it through Austin, and then I was gonna go out west and then come back. It's gonna be a 30-day thing. I keep saying it was gonna be because it didn't happen. I made it to Austin. I felt exactly all these feelings. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like my loved ones, everything is back there. Like I'm so far away. Like this is crazy. And I felt all of those emotions. And basically, I didn't go through with that trip the way I envisioned. Afterwards, me and my wife, or at that time my partner, we flew out and like did parts of that trip and all that. But I had to change that. But those the intensive feelings that I felt were the same that I felt here as well.
That's good, rich stuff. What I mean, there's so many avenues that we can go into, and to that, I'm curious if there's anything in particular where you want to start.
I'm honestly still unpacking all of that. In that moment, I made sure that I gave myself the space and the permission to feel all that, because there could have been things that I could have done to like escape that, but I wanted to be in that space, and it was actually really, really, really tough. I remember specifically having a moment where I actually had to hold back, because if I kept allowing myself to go down that feeling, I mean, I just felt pure panic, like within myself, and out of protection for myself, I had to at some point be like, okay, wait, like let's just pause on feeling all of this, or allowing myself to feel all of this.
Well, let me kind of start with. I have my own familiarity with the experience that you're talking about. At various times, I'm struggling to come up with the example because I've had multiple examples of it, and I have my particular what I've learned from going through that emotion, like that kind of an emotional process, the strategies that I've developed, the part of like the feelings being so overwhelming. I attribute it to when the feelings get so overwhelming, it's almost it feels like death.
Right.
It feels like because it.
I think that was that moment where I had to hold back. Right.
And so that it was where I have like I consider that moment to be kind of a door. It's a doorway into the unknown. And I think that's the door in which it's a doorway of resistance. It's a doorway in which everything builds up. And it's like you either push or you walk away, or you turn away, or you distract and go the other direction. And I don't talk about the door as something that when you get to that door that you're supposed to push in. It's not like this is the work and you're just supposed to go through that door.
Yeah,
you just
like a right answer.
Right. Yeah. It's because I do think that getting to that doorway is a version of like, it's where I go with when I talk about death practice. That's kind of one of the entry points of like, what is that death practice? Walking through that door. Because walking through that door is, I feel like I got to back up a little bit and kind of get into the emotions first. Let me back up. I want to back up and you mentioned anger. I consider anger kind of like the fire. It's like the fire that is fed into the engine of a locomotive. Mm-hmm. The more you got bricks, you got bricks of anger that you throw into that fire, and the more bricks you throw in, the bigger the fire is, and that fire moves, right? It moves the engine. It feeds that engine. That engine propels from it, which is part of the reason that anger can be an incredibly useful emotion to get things done. Now, what you get done with anger is going to be questionable because of the other aspects of how anger works.
Right.
But anger is the fire. I think you were describing a little bit of what you were describing sounded like defiance. Like you were feeling when you were leaving to go back and you're like, I don't want to. It's like, I want to defiance being, it's like a 3-year-old having a tantrum. Like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Right. Digging feet in and just stomping and wanting to have a tantrum.
Right.
And it's like,
right.
Anger feeds defiance. Anger is a part of the engine that feeds it, but really defiance is kind of, I don't want to there's other emotions going on in there other than anger. And I think that's useful in order to like parse out exactly what you are feeling, because anger is the big emotion that feeds it, but there's other emotions that direct.
Yeah. The nuance.
It's nuance of like where the direction is being steered. Because there'll be anger. Anxiety will be stimulated from anger. Fear, anger, and judgment, I consider kind of like the fires of the anger engine. Because you can really fire up, you get a lot of like, you can get an engine roaring really well with the combination of fear, anger, and judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider those kind of like deep root emotions. And then other emotions, or the nuanced emotions, are built kind of off of the combination of those primary three. So, getting like the emotions being so big. Well, let me kind of leave it there and pass it back to you on how all that, see how you want to go in the direction of that with where I want.
Yeah. So, you were talking about the feeling of defiance. I actually don't know a ton about that. I don't actually know what that word really means, let alone what that feeling would be like. But, you were talking about a 3-year-old having a tantrum, and it's like, and I was saying, oh, I had felt this way before because 3 years ago, this trip, whatever. But I can keep going back. It was actually when I moved to America, and I was just feeling all of that because I was missing my uncle that I'm extremely close to. So we would always listen to this song, and if that song I would play, I can trigger like those emotions. Even before that, there's like I don't know what's going on, but it's like a daycare situation here right down the street. And I think just this week, I was walking to the train station to go to work, and this kid was crying. He or she was like held by their mother, and the mother was just saying like you can't just run away. Like you need to be here. And I don't know what the story was because I'm just passing by, but my relationship to it, which was that when I was in like pre-K or something, I also remember experiencing that where I'm literally running away from the person who's picking me up to take me to school and just saying like, no, I don't want to go. But I think all of that is very similar. And they have a very common thread through and through. And maybe that's what you're saying as the defiance.
Yeah, defiance.
Is that like rejection? Like what?
No, it's just I don't want to.
Oh, okay.
It's like I don't want to. It's there's stubbornness to it. There's fear.
Right.
Like I don't want. Like I'm afraid. I talk about we're comfort-seeking creatures. I'm comfortable, and you're asking me to do something different.
Yeah.
I can describe it a little bit better with 3-year-olds because 3-year-old, going through toddlership is it's this crazy experience of going through equilibrium into disequilibrium. Our bodies are growing so fast, faster than our neurology can support. So, in one day, like we learn to tie our shoes and we can tie our shoes very well. And then the next day, mom's like, hey, tie your shoes. And it's like, I don't know. It's like all of a sudden, because our neurology is exploding at different rates compared to our body, that we go from we learn the skill, it gets into to equilibrium. And then all of a sudden our body grows another inch overnight and everything is thrown off. How our what was here today is now closer, farther, like it's different. So we go through these periods of growth, which creates disequilibrium, which is going to create a discomfort. And we're going to want what was comfortable. That was what was before, but we're being pushed into something new. uncomfortable. And so it kicks up a lot of emotions of defiance, of I don't want to, digging in heels. And then we get pushed into that new thing and we learn it and we get into a state of equilibrium where, oh, everything's fine. I know how to do it. And then we get pushed into another stage of growth where everything gets thrown off into disequilibrium again. It's really easy to see it as a 3-year-old because they grow so fast. Like from 3 to 5, they get physically bigger. That, and it's like there's a cycle to it. It's like, there's a weekly cycle, a monthly, quarterly cycle. Like every 3 months, you're going through stages of equilibrium and disequilibrium. And then 6 months, you're going through there's like micro levels of it and macro levels of it. So you're constantly cycling through these interesting stages. That doesn't stop just because we've become fully grown. We just don't see the physical growth aspect of that constant being pushed into discomfort and then coming back to, getting to a comfortable stage and then being pushed into that next phase. And I like to just say, like, that's growth. Like when you're a child, it physically hurts because growth is physically painful. That does not change as we get older. Since our bodies have grown, we don't notice it at our, in our bones so much. Yeah. But we still have the emotional experience of it, which again comes back to why I like the parsing out of exactly what you're feeling. Like, being able to name it as anger is a big step. A lot of people really struggle, especially men, really struggle with naming the anger that they're experiencing. But getting into it and getting
microscopic.
Just parsing it out a little bit more. And that's where that doorway becomes important. Because that doorway is the difference of like, I'm going to choose comfort over discomfort. And again, it's not a value judgment, because when it comes to that door, going through the door doesn't mean that that's the best outcome and the right choice. Sometimes we're supposed to walk through the door. Sometimes we're not. And so learning when to say yes to going through it and when to say, it's not today. I don't need to today. This is not the time. I'm actually good over here. That just comes from discernment and trust and practice. But when we have that doorway and the guidance is yes to go through that doorway, then we have the opportunity of the experience of feeling what comes up. Because that's the feelings that come up is where we get to parse out, well, what exactly is this? What exactly am I experiencing here? Where is this all rooted in? Because a lot of the, especially, if you're able to say, I feel this here, but it reminds me of this time here and this other time here, and even this other time here, there's a lot we can learn about ourselves from that.
Just want to delineate something, because you were saying like being able to parse those feelings out, like there's one thing to like do that retrospectively, right? So I can be in a state of meditation and imagine or cultivate what I felt and try to parse that out, versus you're talking about in that moment walking through that door, and then like you're saying the way you would experience feelings then, or they have the opportunity to, like, there could be difference in those two. Because the other one is still in a state of comfort, technically, maybe. I don't know. When I'm retrospectively looking at it, it's like, oh, like, yeah, I may not necessarily be feeling that, but maybe I could be calling upon those feelings to be cultivated.
Well, it's a little bit of both, because you have to experience it in order to be able to then later be retrospective on the experience and to really understand the experience. You're not going to understand the experience while you're experiencing it.
Yeah.
You're walking through that door you're going to be feeling things at a level in which is not comfortable, which means you're going to be feeling things at a level which you have never really felt things.
Yeah.
Potentially. Like there's the potential you walk. So let me describe my experience with this. And I'm not going to use a specific example partly because I don't have one coming fresh to mind. And because I've gone through this so many times that it's just, I think I can talk about it without needing specifics. So getting to the door, the door, there's like a weight to the door. The door, it presses heavy on the chest. It kicks up fear, anxiety, self-judgment, insecurity, right? This is uncomfortable. This is comfortable. And the more you move to that door, man, like it shows up in the way that we breathe. Right now, I feel loose. I can get a nice full breath in and out. I don't feel any tightness on my chest. But the more I walk closer and closer to that door, to move into that door, I feel it tighten in my chest. And I feel it, my heart rate starts to climb. I feel I feel the physiology of the stress of what I'm going through emotionally. And, it's shortness of breath. It's starting to tight. And it feels like if I keep going through, I will stop breathing. My heart will stop beating. I will die. And I get to that precipice of like, this feels like death. This feels like if I keep going, I will die. And that's where I have to ask, okay, do I need to go? Is this the doorway for me to go? Am I supposed to go through this door, or am I not today? And if I get yes to go through the door, I take that next step, and it's a step of, I surrender to this. I might die.
What's to come. Yeah.
And there's a willingness to like, okay, I'm willing to die. I'm willing to experience that breath that might be my last breath. And there's that part of me that considers, I think I've talked about this in previous podcasts of, I want my last breath in life to be a breath that is surrendered to God, in which I can reflect back on my life and be at peace. And the only way that I know how to ensure that my last breath is that I work to make every breath that. Because I don't know when my last breath is going to be. So if I'm continually surrendering to God with every breath, then I ensure I'm more likely to, my last breath is that surrender. And so this feels like a practice of that, because I get to practice. This might be my last breath, and I'm willing. God, I'm open, I'm willing, whatever there is for me to see, whatever there is for me to experience. And if it's my death, then that's what I'm walking through. So it's that taking that next breath, and it's like, oh, it tightens, and it's like being willing to take the breath after that and continuing to walk forward is an experience. And it's uncomfortable until you get a few more breaths in and you realize, like, I'm still breathing. I'm not dead. And so each breath gets to be that surrender, and there's a melting away eventually of all that. And once things melt away, it's that melting away where it's like, that's where I start to get more insights into what it is that I'm actually feeling. It's like the emotions start to melt away, and it's like, oh, defiance, stubbornness, insecurity. And part of it is because I'll get visualizations of like other periods of time in my life in which I was experiencing these. And it's like, I start to see all the places and where this has shown up, and it makes more sense to me. I have more insight into my emotionality. And then in the reflections later on, I get like the insight continues. And every time I go through that, you have the experience, and then you also have like the download that takes place after the fact as you get to continue to reflect upon it. And then the more times that you walk through that door, it makes it easier to continue to walk through that door. And again, walking through the door is not a judgment, because sometimes I don't walk through the door. It's not just because the door is there, I don't want to go bulldoze my way through it. Because the reality is like I don't consider going through that door as something that is necessarily a safe thing to do. If I don't have clear reason to go through that door, if I'm actually getting a no, I'm getting a strong like don't go, and I go through that door, I could do damage to myself. I may not be prepared for what I'm going to feel. So it's not something that I necessarily advise people to just like go through the door. You have to like really get comfortable and get, the closer you get to it, the more you see it, and not everybody's willing to. Not everybody is willing to do that next level. But I consider that doorway is, there's the story of the old ancient story of find the old man, woman who's been living in isolation for all their lives, who they have the secrets, right? They have the secret to life. Go find them. And so you go on the long journey to find this person, and then you find them, and they give you riddles, right? They don't tell you it exactly. They give you riddles. They tell you well, you got to sit in this space for for a period of time, and you have to do these kind of tedious tasks, and eventually, like, the knowledge will be bestowed on you. And if you're impatient and you can't do that tedious work, the knowledge never comes. And in the solving of the riddles, you realize that that guru, that teacher, doesn't have, they can't teach you the knowledge as something like that can just hand to you.
Yeah.
The realization is that the knowledge, it comes from slowing down, getting to a point where you are not, you're physically still, and you are breathing, so that you have to feel the weight of everything that comes when we slow down enough to get to that door. So that guru is only simply exposing the door, and then it's the individual's choice to go through it or not go through it. So I consider that as kind of like, that's what we're talking about, is like that it's the slow work that I think that culturally we've kind of lost in the world, largely because of our technology and other things that make it a lot harder to go through that door.
Do you think that this labeling of missing, that's really a mask or synonymous to basically just, I'm missing someone, or I'm missing a lifestyle, what I had before? Like, those are the verbiage that comes to be, is really synonymous to just, I was in that comfortable space and I don't want to be in this uncomfortable space at the moment.
No, I think that's too simplistic. One, I think missing is kind of similar to how you're using anger, right? Anger is an emotion, but there's a lot more emotions there. Missing, there's a lot more emotions going on, right?
Yeah.
There's grief, there's sadness, there's pain, right? I'm physically away from the people that I love, and you are literally going from like being in the space of people that you love and comfort, right? You're in your apartment that you've helped build for the past couple of years, with your wife in Austin, and even preceding that, you had a period of time where there's ways and you can describe this and it just makes sense. If you were to talk about this as somebody else other than you, it's like, hey, you have this opportunity to go explore this new space, to set roots, and then your wife to come join you. Man, that feels great. Like, oh, I get to go do this thing. I miss my wife during this period of time, but there's meaning and there's purpose, and I know she's going to come join me. So I have a few weeks of like, I have purpose, I got meaning. Do I miss her? Yeah, but I don't feel it as relevant because I have all these other things. Are they, things that they're distracting from the feelings I would feel otherwise. And then you go home and you get to go, you go back, right? And now you get the comfort of your wife, you got the comfort of your dog, right? Comfort of the home, and then you got to go back to this place.
Yeah.
Without her.
Yeah.
And you've done most of the work that there's like the meaning and the purpose of that first trip out is not the same as now. And now you know what you're going to is emptiness in comparison of what you're leaving. So you're going to have different feelings on that trip than you did on the first trip. And if you didn't have this experience, I would go, do you really love your wife? Do you really care? Like, these seem like pretty normal emotions. Man. If you're thinking about somebody, if you're talking about somebody else, you'd be like, that sounds like a legitimate experience. And if you didn't feel that way, I would actually be questioning what kind of a person you are. So again, like, what you're experiencing makes sense, but it also brings an opportunity. All these feelings, the feeling, there's the loneliness, the grief, the physical pain, like there's a physical pain that comes with it. There's probably other emotions. Like I'm not in you, so I can't tell you exactly what you're feeling. I can tell you what I hear because I've experienced similar things, but what you're feeling exactly and how those feelings attach to different stories in your life, that part is where there's a lot of richness, because our emotions that are attached to stories are where, so our emotions attached to stories. Okay.
It can go the other way too, right? Because we can have experiences that are then like causing certain emotions.
Yes, and we're storytelling beings.
Yeah.
So our emotions are attached to stories, and we attach stories to our emotions.
Right.
And this is a non-judgment thing because it's simply what we do. But then you can get into a level in which you judge what type of story you attach to your emotions.
Yeah.
A lot of the stories that we attach to our emotions have been programmed into us because we're taught how to
like
what
our
stories to
associations and stuff.
right, because that's a lot of that we get from our family, our culture, our society. They tell us like these emotions have this what they mean.
Yeah.
And that's helpful in the sense of conforming us to social society and family stuff, but we also have our individual. So we have stories attached to emotions, some of which have been programmed, so they're not by our choice. And those stories are always running in the background. An emotion comes up, it's going to go and just grab the easiest, most comfortable story, access that. And so if it's an old story, the older the story and the more used the story, there's a neurology to our story. So the older the story and the more often we use that story, that one's probably going to get replayed the most. But how those stories replay become areas in which we can be manipulated or we can manipulate ourselves. Because if we have stories attached to particular emotions that are not stories that we chose and we are not questioning our stories, and so they just automatically tell us what our emotions mean, but we aren't actually going in and doing some reflective work to say, is it true? Is the story actually true? Then we can be living and experiencing things based on a lot of old stories that don't actually serve us very well.
Yeah.
So the going through the door means that we get to then see and parse out and see how these emotions go back in time going forward. And the more often we do that, the more so we'll get better at, instead of just calling it anger as one big thing, because anger is one big thing, doesn't tell us all the little stories that are actually being attached to that anger. We get in and it's like, oh yeah, there's definitely anger. So, definitely want to surrender anger and want to get underneath the anger. But I was like, no, I feel that defiance. I feel that inner 3-year-old. I can actually feel that experience of being a child, not wanting to go to school and just being on the ground and having a tantrum. And there might be some insight into the story that comes from. Maybe it's an attachment to mom or attachment to father, or a way in which they either coddled us too much, or maybe they pushed us away too fast, and we had like a trauma from it.
Yeah.
And that trauma has a story attached to it that every time that feeling gets kicked up, it takes us back into that being a 3-year-old. That can be insightful, because if I start to get good at feeling that triggers that 3-year-old, there's going to be times where that 3-year-old gets triggered and makes a complete mess of what's ever going on, because a 3-year-old doesn't know how to doesn't say the right things, doesn't have long-term, like, if I say this thing now, how is that going to affect down the road? It just says it, just behaves in these 3-year-old ways. So if I get better at feeling it before it triggers this other layer of stuff, then I'm less likely to act out like a 3-year-old. And in relationships, our relationships with people, they learn our stories, they learn our emotions, and they learn how to trigger those things in order to manipulate us unconsciously. Some people it's conscious, but most of us it's unconscious. So the better you get at understanding the emotional, the matrix of what, these feelings that come up. This is defiance. Defiance feels it has anger in it, but it feels a little bit different. Insecurity, man, it feels similar. Right. Like defiance and insecurity are going to feel a lot alike, because defiance is going to be a part of, when we feel insecure, we're going to want to fight back so defiance and insecurity are going to be wrapped up together. Hurt and pain tend to be at the root of a lot of this stuff, because when we're in pain, we want to protect. And if anything is trying to poke into that, we're going to fight back. It's going to kick up anger and defiance. And so there's going to be all these little interesting emotions that they all feel a little different when you feel them isolated from the whole, but when it's all one big thing, it's like, it's just a big fire of anger or a big fire of fear. And so again, like going through that, parsing it out, learning like the deeper emotional matrix of how these things feel, give us more, one, it allows us to see old stories and go, that story is not serving me. So I can snip that. I can prune that story. And because we're storytellers, I get to attach a new story and I get to choose the story that I'm going to attach. And that's where there's power. There's a tremendous amount of power in what you're talking about in the potential of going through that door.
I'm in the spot right now when it comes to this where I find myself laughing and enjoying the connection that I see of different experiences having a very similar thread. And even in that intense moment, I was like, it actually, I think, what I want to say is that was the first time that I got to really like be in the midst of that and come to the realization I've felt all of this before. And I didn't have to have the download to then find out like, oh yeah, this is the same as that time, or et cetera, et cetera. And I believe that the more I get to experience these, when the next set of events and the feelings come, it gets more and more in alignment, or more and more like awareness of just like, oh, this is what it is. And I think it really just comes down to, at the root of it, being able to recognize these nuanced, parsed out emotions. I did not see that coming. I'm telling you, like, I don't know why, but it's when I look back on it, I'm like, you fool, Smith. Like, how could you not have, like, what did you think the Monday morning was going to be like? You just gonna, come back here, maybe like log into work and just continue on, huh? Like, and it's also really interesting that I know for sure that event and the event before that, so the most two recent events that all of these feelings or emotions are attached to, had something to do with like being sleep deprived, like something where it put me in a different like state of mind that I don't think I would have felt as intensively if I had like 8 hours of sleep or something.
So
it's like there's a recipe. There's a recipe to all this.
It's 100%. It's a recipe. In the work with my teachers, we actually, it's the pressure cooker, right? That we get put in. So, equilibrium, disequilibrium, right? We're constantly, everything's in cycles. I've talked about this in previous ones. Like, we're going to feel elevated, and then there's going to be times we're going to feel depressed, right? Equilibrium, disequilibrium, like it's the same thing. And there's emotional states of equilibrium. There's emotional states of disequilibrium. And in the work, being up here, there's like, this is easy. There's not a lot of work taking place when we're up here, but this is where we want to be because this feels comfortable. This feels good. It's like when we get here, it's like, oh man, I want to stay here forever. And we tend to not recognize when we're on the dip down because we want to convince ourselves that we're still here.
Yeah.
And so we get into this dip. Now, when we get into the dip, things are like, the dip is like, this is a depressed state. So, equilibrium, disequilibrium, we're talking about a system that works within a spectrum. And as long as you're within the spectrum, you're within healthy ranges. But, my spectrum, I'm just changing the angle of it. Like here, it's elevated versus depressed, but really it's all the same thing. When I get to this, when I'm getting close to this edge of the wall, I'm getting into danger territory, whether it feels good or not. And when I'm getting too close to this wall, I'm getting into danger territory. But everything within is a healthy range. And so if I'm, if this is the spectrum, there's an equilibrium point, there's a neutral point where I'm passing from one end to the next. But as soon as I'm moving from one direction into another direction, that's a change it's a change in the environment, in the internal environment. And any change in the internal
like regulation
environment
versus not.
Right.
Yeah.
So any change is going to be stressful. And really any change, whether it's good change or considered negative change, is a stress. It's a change in stress.
It's an alarm.
So it's right. It's a stressor. Yeah. So as soon we're starting to feel the stress when we're getting into the down, but we're not acknowledging it. And so if we're going, this is where we have the benefit of doing the most powerful work is when we're in this part of the phase, not in this part. But if we're defiant and we're kicking and screaming and we're like, I'm not willing, then we're not, I'm not necessarily being open and yes. It's the difference of like, I'm on the roller coaster and I'm holding on for dear life, which means that I'm really feeling every bump is like just going through every jostle is going through my body and it's physically painful versus just letting go. And then I'm more in flow with the ride. So that's the difference of like being in defiant mode versus, okay, yes, I'm surrendered and I'm willing to die for this, metaphorically speaking. So this is stressful if I'm defiant, but if this is a door, it's like if overall I said yes to the work, I said yes to I am willing to go through whatever it is, even when I'm feeling defiant, I'm still yes. Then there's times where I'm going to be pushed down into it, even when I'm defiantly fighting back and not willing to. Mm-hmm. And that is where there's going to be an orchestration of events to really help you get the most out of it. And one of those is exhaustion, sleep, and it's like orchestration is kind of it's almost a magical term because I don't think that there's some master, wizard who's organizing the world in order to
or like
stress
part
us
of the
out.
Simulation.
Right. Yeah. But it just happens naturally. Like it just seems like when you're here and you need that extra push, well, we're going to schedule you to get up at 3:00 in the morning. You're going to have to travel all day on a plane at the same time that you're going through this emotional change just to really like put the pressure up because sleep deprivation is going to stress the system out too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a value to it because when we're tired, we can't suppress our emotions as well, especially the deep emotions. And so deep stuff's going to come, it's going to seep, it's going to seep out of the seams. And that's an opportunity to see ourselves, to see what we're feeling. And so, like in the work with my teachers, it came something like, I started looking forward to that. It's like, oh, this is going to be a tough week. I'm maxed out busy. So I know I'm going to be going, this is going to be rough. This is going to be a rough week. I know going into it. And so I go in open to it, which means that I'm open to it. It doesn't mean the defiance doesn't happen because the defiant, you can't prevent the emotions that are there from being felt. So if defiance is in there, it's going to come out. But because I have that, like, I know what I'm going into. I've done this before. When I feel the defiance, it's just kind of like, there's that toddler. And I can love on that toddler. I can walk that toddler through the door, hold his hand. I can be a little nice. And, I have an 18-year-old, and when he was a 3-year-old and he'd go through a tantrum, I would just hold him and I'd let him flail. He wasn't allowed to bite me. He wasn't allowed to hit me. If he was, I'd put him in a position where he couldn't. And I just let him run it out. And he'd get to a point where he was like, and it'd just make it okay. It's like, you're allowed to be a toddler. You're allowed to be pissed off right now. Get the energy out. I'm just going to hold you until it's done. And he'd eventually exhaust himself. And then, I'd be, look, are we good? Look me in the eyes. Can you follow instructions? Like, yes. Are you ready to go? And it's like that little monster toddler that was rearing his ugly head all of a sudden, like, flipped and was like perfectly good. And I'd let him go and he was happy as a clam. Smile would come on his face almost immediately. So I did the same thing with myself.
Yeah.
That was I see that inner toddler, hold him, caress him, hold his hand. And then when he was ready, let him go. And that was a different experience from kind of what you were describing. It's like, I'm feeling it when you're feeling it for the first time, it's just like, it's effing scary. Like be a 3-year-old in an adult body is just not a comfortable thing to be.
Expected also the surprise element and all that. Yeah. But I'm very, very thankful to have experienced that in a very surprising manner, because I think its gifts are in all of that. It's the recipe, it's the pressure, it's all of that. And yeah.
There's another gift there. I'm going to give you, there's one more gift. So, talk about our spectrum. Some people have a very narrow spectrum. They got very little room, the very little emotionality that they're willing to really like experience. I want to grow. And the reason I want to grow. So, I think we've talked about this as well. Like,
That sounds like control. Like from that someone
control.
else's perspective, like if they're in that narrow spectrum.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
control, but it could be also like the capacity. There's lots of variables. I get it. Like they
control,
could be
control's a good word. Control's a good word there. Yeah.
Yeah. But go ahead.
It's emotional control. Like if we're trying, like I don't want to feel bad, I'm controlling my emotions. I'm not willing to go there. But my controlling that means I'm affecting the other side because this is a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So most people feel, I want to be in equilibrium. I want to be in this comfortable neutral place where I don't feel bad. But in doing that means I'm also affecting my capacity to feel good, beauty, amazing.
That's confusing to me. Like, how are you impacting your capacity to experience the positive aspect of the spectrum by not allowing the negative to be exposed? I mean, are you just saying because it's an ebb and flow, like that's just how the natural state is? I can understand it from that point of view, but
there's a little bit of that, but it's also how much contrast.
Yeah, it's kind of like you can only see light if there's darkness or whatever.
I was exactly where I was going to go. You can only see light because of darkness, right? And the dark, like it. Why
So
why do we
equal
love
value to both of that, right?
Yeah, and why do we? What is it about a sunrise or a sunset that is so magnificent? If it wasn't because of like the long night leading up to the sunset, or the long night that might be coming after that, the long night after before the sunrise, or the long night that might be preceding that sunset, and knowing that like the darkness, the survivability of those long dark nights, contrast. What is gratitude? Right. I like to say that gratitude is really something that we experience after we've fallen down the stairs. Right. You don't get gratitude by having a good life and never having any turmoil. Right.
Right.
Like gratitude comes from people who really experience gratitude have gone through some shit. It's contrast. The worst I experience, the worse I feel, the worse things I've gone through, the more beauty I see in the world. There's probably another layer that the more I've been willing to go through. Because there's people who go through horrible stuff, but it's not necessarily willing, open. They're not engaged in a practice. Not necessarily at their own fault. They may not have the tools, or they may not have been offered the tools. And so they're just like, life is just hard. So I like, just because you experience hardship doesn't mean you will automatically experience beauty and gratitude. But if you want to experience more beauty and gratitude, this is the outlet. You don't get it going that way because there's no contrast. If everything feels good all the time, life would be boring and we'd be miserable. I lived in Southern California for a number of years when I was in the Navy, and I got to the point where I hated the weather because I grew up in Texas where we had thunderstorms. And to go 9 months out of the year where it doesn't even rain and it's 70 to 90 degrees and sunny every day. Yeah. It's beautiful, right? It's spectacular, but it never changes. I remember in the 3.5 years I lived there was one day where it was below 32 degrees in the morning, and I had frost on my car, and I had to sit for a few minutes to let the frost go off the window so I could drive. I was so happy. I was so excited because it was so contrast. Different.
The contrast. Yeah.
So, that's been my experience of going through the door, and it's the reason I'm willing to go through that door over and over again. Is because every time I do, what I see on the other side is so much more spectacular.
It's a good place to stop this episode. I think it was very fruitful. And yeah, I hope the folks enjoy this episode.
I think this was probably our best one.